Okay, hi everyone. I'm Karen Officer, Director of the Undergraduate Filmmaking Program here at Stony Brook University. I am very excited to welcome you to our Create Wednesdays program. It is an ongoing series of events and opportunities for you to have conversations with filmmakers and writers. This is the second of several virtual events this semester, and we hope you continue to join us as we showcase additional incredible talent throughout the remainder of the semester. Please follow us on Instagram at Wolfie Filmmakers. Today, we are in conversation with Kate Levitt. Kate is a writer and musician from Brooklyn, a serial prankster. Kate's been involved with a handful of viral hoaxes, including faking a case to get on Judge Judy and creating a joke vape juice company that was picked up by Fact Magazine and Brooklyn Magazine. I loved it, her intro. Kate's currently a ghostwriter for a social media influencer with over 600,000 followers and a reader for Meryl Streep's Screenwriting Lab. Her scripted pilot, Living, was a finalist in the Atlanta Film Festival and was awarded Showtime's Tony Cox Award. Kate's music projects have been profiled in Vogue Italia, The Village Voice, and NPR. Please join me in welcoming Kate Levitt.
Hi everyone. So before we get started, I should just say that thank you for having me. This is awesome. And also in writing this, I realized that I couldn't do this topic justice without getting into some heavy and perhaps sensitive topics such as race, gender, and mental and physical health. So if these are topics that you don't feel comfortable listening to, maybe tune out around 15 minutes in. The first bit is a little bit dry, but I think it gets better. So here we go. The internet is built on connections, physically from cables to routers, but also of thought. You can go into a Wikipedia wormhole and connect from augmented reality to Taylor Swift through keywords which are relevant to both topics, for example. Activism, especially grassroots activism, is also about connections, connecting with people who share your ideas in order to foster social change. It makes sense then that one would use a tool such as the internet, which is designed by connections for activities like protesting which utilize them. The question is how? And are the connections made virtually using social media equally as potent to those that exist in person, or can they work in tandem? Are online protests as effective as those that happen in the physical world? And are there means of protest that exist online? And are there means of protest that exist online that couldn't in a physical space? Today, we are going to discuss these questions specifically in relation to YouTube. But YouTube was started in 2005, 15 years after what was arguably the first major example of cyber activism. So in order to understand YouTube's role in the digital activism landscape, we should briefly discuss the platforms that came before it. The majority of early activism took the form of email correspondence. This tactic started in April of 1990 against a company called the Lotus Marketplace. Lotus Marketplace was a collaboration between Equifax, the credit rating company, and Lotus, a software company, which provided information for 120 million US consumers on CD-ROM. If you're unfamiliar, this is a CD-ROM. It's this puppy, except you can only read information on it, not add information to it. But this data included things like people's purchase behavior, what products they were buying, names, addresses, social demographics, etc., for businesses to use as targeted advertising research. Problematically, however, Equifax declined to tell people that their personal information was being sold to businesses. And when people found out about this, they went bananas. Interestingly, we accept this as common practice now, at least jaded millennials like myself do, but at the time it was unheard of. In fact, in 1973, the US Department of Health, Education, and Welfare put out a report on fair information practices, which included the idea that personal information collected for one purpose, such as determining one's credit score, shouldn't be used for an alternate purpose, such as marketing. So net activists mobilized. They sent emails and e-bulletins to thousands of recipients containing form emails of disapproval to forward to the Lotus company. In the end, over 30,000 people contacted Lotus, and their reputation threatened. Lotus Marketplace was abandoned. This may seem like whatever to us now, but at the time it was revolutionary. Sending an email to a company was infinitely more expeditious than sending a letter, and far easier than organizing an online protest outside the Lotus or Equifax headquarters. Today, this practice is commonplace. Not just commonplace, but automated. Sites like change.org blast out thousands of petitions per day for people on email lists to sign with a single click. And it's democratized. You don't need to be an activist to start an online petition. Anyone can do it. In fact, some change.org petitions include things like demand Head and Shoulders create a body wash called Knees and Toes, which closed with over 399 signatures, and change the name of Fire Ants to Spicy Boys, which closed with almost 3,000 signatures, despite it being unclear who exactly would implement this vernacular change. Now, 30 years after Lotus Marketplace discontinued, the internet is flooded with petitions, so much so that it's unclear whether anyone still considers them a threat. For example, a petition calling for the arrest of officers involved in Breonna Taylor's death has over 11 million signatures, but the officers will never likely be convicted of anything. And a petition to postpone the appointment of a new Supreme Court justice was started 2 weeks ago and already has almost 10,000 signatures, so it's unlikely this or anything else rational will persuade Trump or Mitch McConnell to change course. The change.org website claims 1 victory per hour, but what a victory here is considered is abstract. Jason Del Gandio, a professor of communications at Temple University, says what constitutes online success for online petitions are things like raising awareness for a subject. This is fine, but considering the outcome of the Lotus petition, this definition of success is not very ambitious, right? Because in the same way Trump can ignore the public's desire to postpone Amy Coney Barrett's appointment, you can be aware of an issue and not do anything about it, or change your behavior just because you know it exists. Over 100,000 people have signed a petition to stop killing wild horses, but how many of those people are really going to stop buying glue? Kidding. I should say Elmer's has made it very clear they use a synthetic formula, but you understand. There's 637 current petitions about saving cows, and I'm sure not all the signatories are vegetarian, which is exactly the problem. People's signatures mean little. And again, there's this. This so-called clicktivism isn't specific to change.org. Liking a charity on Facebook or retweeting their call for support has the same effect or lack thereof, which begs the question, is it possible in the social media age of the internet for content to catalyze socio-political change? And if so, how? Well, in 2014, this happened.
All right, I've been officially called out by John Bullis in the Ice Bucket Challenge. In return, I'm calling out Jeanette Sinertia, Matt Dodson, and Kevin Allen. You have 24 hours to respond, or you're going to donate $100 to the ALS Foundation. Here we go. Good luck, guys.
The Ice Bucket Challenge. It ended up helping scientists discover a new gene for ALS. Okay, stop for a moment and actually think about this. A video of a nerd in a shirt so bright it would blind Superman dumped a trash can of ice on his head, and a gene was found for one of the most lethal and arguably most debilitating diseases known to man. Clearly, it's not that simple. In brief, our boy Chris was nominated for the Ice Bucket Challenge, which in its original incarnation wasn't tied to any particular charity by a friend, but due to Chris having a relative who suffered from ALS, he picked the ALS Association and specified this as he shared the video, and it caught fire, first spreading through Chris's town of Sarasota, Florida, then to New York and outwards. Ultimately, 2.5 million participants donated $115 million to the ALS Association, which was used for research. Now consider this. In 2018, change.org user-generated revenue totaled only $32.7 million, a fraction of what was raised for ALS by one silly challenge. And as we know, change.org petitions get tens of millions of signatures. So, to finally get to one of our essential questions, why is YouTube specifically such a potent means for inciting change? What differentiates watching a video, specifically a YouTube video, from ordinary clicktivism? Because here's the really weird thing. According to research by Penn State, many people who donated to the Ice Bucket Challenge didn't even know what ALS was. Like, they were giving away money just because that's what the challenge said to do. We can surmise a few reasons for this. Of course, it was silly and fun, which people liked, but also it was personal. People were targeted or nominated to donate by their friends or family, by people they cared about and communities they felt a part of. There wasn't any mass marketing or email spam involved. And many people find watching videos more engaging, or at least easier than reading and interpreting a text. I think that's a big one, actually. To put it bluntly, you can watch a video without thinking and still retain information. While the Ice Bucket Challenge was one of the most effective incidences of viral YouTube activism, it wasn't the first. This was perhaps the first.
Brother tried to escape. Then they killed using panga. They cut his neck.
Did you see it?
I saw.
We are going to make Joseph Kony a household name, not to celebrate him, but to bring his crimes to the light. And we are starting this year, 2012.
When citizens, by the hundreds of thousands, start demanding that our government do something, suddenly it becomes in the national interest of the United States government to respond to this problem.
We've identified the 12 policymakers that could change the game regarding Kony, so we're targeting them. On our website, we've made it easy to write them directly, call them, meet with them, and get their attention. So we are making Kony world news by redefining the propaganda we see all day, every day, that dictates who and what we pay attention to. And that's just what we intend to do. Our goal is to change the conversation of our culture and get people to ask, who is Joseph Kony? We have printed hundreds of thousands of posters, stickers, yard signs, and flyers that are right now, today, being put up in major cities all over the world. Start making Kony famous today, but all of these efforts will culminate on one day, April 20th, when we cover the night. This is the day when we will meet at sundown and blanket every street in every city till the sun comes up. We will be smart and we will be thorough. The rest of the world will go to bed Friday night and wake up to hundreds of thousands of posters demanding justice on every corner.
Okay, so I don't know about you guys, but I don't remember a day in 2012 where I woke up and the streets were just littered with Kony 2012 posters and pamphlets flying through the sky and paper everywhere for this. And that's because Kony 2012 was just an epic, epic fail. Quickly, this video was made by San Diego nonprofit Invisible Children with the intent of illuminating the atrocities of Joseph Kony, a Ugandan warlord who recruits child soldiers. Through this awareness, Invisible Children hoped to raise money which they would put towards finding him and stopping his endeavors. But after the video's release, Jezebel put out a roundtable critique of the video called think twice before donating to Coney 2012, the charitable meme du jour. This fiery essay spanned everything from invisible children is staffed by douchebags and the film is, quote, pompous twaddle with no fucking relevance to anything, to more substantive criticism, such as that invisible children had dubious financing practices. Apparently, only 32% of their donations went to direct action, and the other 68% was spent on salaries, transport, and film production. And while Coney 2012 was viewed over 100 million times, unlike the Ice Bucket Challenge, it accomplished absolutely nothing. Nothing came of this. Joseph Coney still exists. He's still a threat, though according to one source, part of his army defected to sell honey, though unfortunately I didn't have a bunch of time to do a deep dive into that. But in 2014, NPR did an interview with Jason Russell, the founder of Invisible Children, who mused that a large part of the reason their video campaign failed was because they were ill-prepared for its potential success. Russell never anticipated Coney 2012 would be watched 120 million times in 5 days. They only had one intern to field all the questions they received. But was that really what it did it in? The Ice Bucket Challenge, remember, had literally no one behind it. If you had a question about that thing, you had no one to ask. And it isn't like the ALS Association is beyond reproach. In fact, many ALS patients hate the ALS Association. Angelina Fanuo, an ex-vice editor who was diagnosed with ALS at 27, has called into question the ALS Association's lack of funding for potential life-saving medications like Neuron, and even called them out on Twitter for being racist. So Russell's theories feel more like lame excuses rather than an honest reflection on what really happened. Both videos were calls to donate, I believe, by well-meaning individuals, so why did one succeed and one fail? My personal opinion is that while Coney 2012 visually depicted stronger, more brutal images, the glossiness of the film stripped it of its humanity, of its realness. There's something almost fake about it in the way Hollywood movies are. And I'm not the only one who felt this way. Theories emerged suggesting that the entire video was a hoax, and rumors started that many of the claims in the films were exaggerations, even that Coney himself hadn't been in Uganda for 6 years. Though I suppose there was really nothing to question about the Ice Bucket Challenge, except, wait, what am I donating to? The whole thing had a naive quality that Coney 2012 lacked. What's there not to trust about a family dumping water on themselves in their backyard on a Sunday afternoon? To be fair, and this now we're going into pure Kate Levitt speculation, but I believe inasmuch as the internet is about the democratization of information, YouTube is about the democratization of the lived experience. It's real reality television. YouTube is where we go to watch dudes in stained sweatpants unbox the newest Nintendo console and learn how to make whipped coffee from homeschooling moms in Jenny Kane slippers. It's not typically where we go to watch produced content. In fact, YouTube tried to produce its own professional scripted shows on the premium YouTube platform. It didn't go well at all. Launched in 2014, the service peaked at around 1.5 million subscribers. That's 181 less than Netflix had in the same time. This may sound like apples and oranges because YouTube Red was a newer platform than Netflix, but regular YouTube has over 2 billion users, so the conversion rate was ridiculously small. Suzanne Daniels, formerly an executive development executive for shows like Dawson's Creek, stepped down from her position as Red's head of content in 2015, and it's never rebounded. In 2018, YouTube Red became YouTube Premium and abandoned its exclusive paid content for a subscription where you watch regular YouTube only without commercials. But like, of all of you guys sitting here right now, you can unmute yourself and answer this question if the answer is yes. How many of you have watched an entire YouTube Red series? Please, don't be afraid if you have, let me know, because I'm very curious about it. Okay, what if you've watched even one episode of a YouTube Red series? Right? No one. Also me, I have not. So in a way, Invisible Children launching Coney 2012 on YouTube was like someone driving a Lamborghini at a NASCAR race. People wondered what it was doing there and they didn't trust it. But how does this relate back to activism generally? Well, I'm sure you've all seen some version of this.
Okay, for those who just saw that, a car people here. Where's the police now, motherfucker? So a cop car just drove by Truxton just outside of this area. The protesters ran in the street behind him, and then a driver of a gray SUV plowed through the people. I can't see right now if anybody is. He's driving back. He's turned around. He's come back.
Yes.
Hey guys, get out of the street. Guys, just be safe. Just get out of the street, okay? Just get out of the street. Just be safe, okay?
I fucking told you to stay where
YouTube is home to hundreds of thousands of shareable, homemade, or leaked police footage clips of racial violence, for example, happening in real time, at protests or on any given day. These aren't shiny edited clips. Many of them are filmed on cell phones in low resolution and at odd angles as the ad hoc videographer tries to reconcile what they're witnessing. And unlike the Kony 2012 footage, these videos enrage people to action. I don't need to wax about what happened after the George Floyd footage leaked because we're still living through it. But suffice to say, watching it changed people emotionally in ways that are causing them to make different choices. A civics poll showed that the number of registered voters who support Black Lives Matter increased 15% between 2017 and 2020, and opposition to it has dropped 11% in the same time period. Nancy Pelosi has ordered the removal of portraits of 4 former House speakers who served in the Confederacy from the US Capitol, and Governor Cuomo has called for the complete reinvention of the NYPD. But honest question, if there was no footage of George Floyd's death, only written commentary and an accompanying video, such as a newspaper article, would it have been as impactful? If a picture is worth 1,000 words, how much is a spontaneously made video worth? I can only draw conclusion based on the fact that in 2019, 13 of the 235 Black individuals killed by police were unarmed, and none of them incited the call to action we're experiencing now. Likely in part because there was no visual record of it happening. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, the BBC put out an article titled, "Breonna Taylor, Timeline of Black Deaths Caused by Police," but failed to mention even one that happened in 2019. It skips from Stephen Clark's death in 2018, which was caught on police body cam footage, to Breonna Taylor's death this year. This is unfortunate because each of the 2019 incidents deserve to be duly noticed, and maybe they would be and maybe they all would have been if they were given more publicity, but it just goes to show the power user-generated video evidence has in the social media space. Obviously, the Ice Bucket Challenge and police violent videos are very, very different. I don't want to be remiss in saying that those are anything like each other, but they were both effective. While not quite scripted, each Ice Bucket video follows the same short format. Despite this, there were people who I'm sure watched at least 10s, if not 20s of these. Watching them was like taking a vodka shot. It induced a short but real serotonin hit. And they were relatable. We all know what it feels like for ice to slide down our shoulders. The police and racial violence videos are the exact opposite. They're erratic and unpredictable. We watch them exactly because we know the outcome isn't what we expect or want it to be, though unfortunately these videos are becoming all too familiar. They move us in different ways. But YouTube isn't just a vlog and challenge factory. One thing that makes the platform so interesting is the myriad of different content, and each format, whether it be a tutorial or a skit, can, hear me out, be used as an activism item. But before we continue with this, let's briefly define activism, because till now we've been discussing it in a vague and general sense. Activism was first described in 1920 to mean advocating energetic action, literally encouraging activity, though today activism usually describes encouraging political action or change. Like, I wouldn't use the word activism to describe a child petitioning their parents to get a puppy, for example. The key word here being political. What is political? This, it turns out, is a linguistic kerfuffle. The term political has been called ubiquitous and unequivocal by political science scholars such as Eugene Miller of Cambridge, who tried unsuccessfully to define it in his aptly titled essay, "What Does Political Mean?" There's even been research studies attempting to gain a consensus of how the general population defines political, but none of those have reached concrete conclusions either. In fact, in 2012, a research study was published in the Journal of Political Behavior called What Does Political Mean to You? In this, political science professor Jennifer Fitzgerald conducted a survey of 241 men and women to try to understand how, quote, regular people define the term politics. But she too came to no particular conclusion, stating only that out of 33 suggestions of topics that might be considered political, not one evoked consensus amongst its respondents. The closest participants came to a full agreement is that 95% concur that diet pills are not political. You can see this chart here. If you look at this chart, which is from that journal entry, more people thought that museum exhibitions and tourism were political than diet pills. Just think about this for a minute, because I thought that was absurd. Because diet pills are so incredibly political. Like, they evoke questions of race and gender and sexuality, which I think we would all agree are political subjects. So my understanding of the word political and how we'll use this through the duration of this chat is similar to the literal Greek translation of politika, from which the word politics is derived. Politika means activities that are associated with making decisions in groups or other forms of power relations between individuals. Politics are about power relations. Any instance where somebody exerts control over another person is political. This doesn't have to be physical power, it can be emotional, and it doesn't have to be overt, it can be subliminal. For example, that some clothing lines only sell up to size 5 is political because it reinforces the normative standard of beauty that smaller is better. It's a manifestation of society controlling where people can shop, where certain people of certain sizes can shop, and the answer is not everywhere, because according to common perception, they shouldn't be allowed to. To bring this back to YouTube, I ask, is the creation of this video activism?
Hey guys, my name is Rachel Chapman. I'm here to show you guys how I do my makeup. And it's not because I'm a makeup artist, it's because I'm actually quadriplegic. I was pushed into a pool at my bachelorette party, I'm paralyzed from the chest down, and I have no hand function. So people always wonder how I do my makeup. So I'm going to show you guys how I do that today. And I'm going to be using this cool mirror. I came across this brand, and it says, "You are enough" on the front, which I totally resonate with, because I wondered after my accident, like, am I enough? And I definitely am, and so are you guys. And it's really cool. It's like super magnified on the inside. And it's got this sensor, so it's super bright and I love it so much. So now I'm going to show you guys how I do my makeup, and yeah, so hopefully you guys learned something, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments.
showed you Rachel's video because I believe that, yes, it's a form of activism. To be clear, the point here isn't exactly that Friedman putting on makeup demonstrates that disabled people can conform to normative beauty standards, which should therefore include all body types, though if you put aside the notion that an ideal body should be abolished altogether, I suppose this isn't a completely irrelevant point. But this is a tutorial. It's about the act of looking pretty as much as it's about the end result. Friedman's video demonstrates a will to live, a self-confidence that she deserves to look good, that society doesn't believe disabled individuals are entitled to. A study released by the UK's Office for Disabled Individuals, titled Public's Perceptions of Disabled People, found that 9% of able-bodied people surveyed thought disabled people, quote, got in the way. 38% of people thought that disabled individuals were less productive than their able-bodied peers, and 77% thought they needed to constantly be taken care of. But Friedman is independent. She doesn't need anyone's help, and she's productive. The reason she's putting on makeup could be to leave for a public speaking engagement or pick up her daughter from school. She's a surfer and a workout junkie. She's everything that these surveyed people don't believe that she could possibly be. The question is, if one of those people who took place in this survey watched Rachel's video, would it cause them to change their behavior? And I think it's realistically possible. Studies have shown that one of the main ways people's perceptions of disabled individuals is changing positively over time is through the media and other sources portraying them in a favorable and quote unquote normal light. So American Eagle's lingerie line Aerie has made a concerted effort to do this, as have other brands such as Target and Clark's Shoes. So let's add tutorials to the list of YouTube formats that can possibly incite social change. But what about this video that I'm about to show? We're not going to watch the whole thing because it's quite long, but I think you'll get the idea from the first couple of minutes of it.
Hey, you look pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah, there's a lot of color in your face.
Thanks.
What are you gonna do tonight?
Probably just make some cards and make a video.
Oh, that'd be cool. Okay. Have a great night.
So I should say this video actually gets quite graphic in the ways that you would probably expect it would, but I felt like you guys could get the idea of what was going on in this video without necessarily seeing that part. But just to say, Educating Shani is one of my absolute favorite YouTubers. She talks about her struggles with anxiety and depression, which I can relate to. But she's also one of the top eating disorder vloggers. This video, Day in the Life of a Bulimic, has over 2 million views. Shani is 35. She's been struggling with bulimia for over 20 years, has said many times that she can't remember when she wasn't this way. The reason she started her channel was to raise awareness for eating disorders, in part because when a family member was in medical school, the only education they received on the subject was one paragraph in a textbook. Shani's message is clear. Bulimia is real and its side effects are catastrophic. If you remember, at 1 minute and 45 seconds, Shani looks in the mirror, studies her reflection. She looks all right. Her cheeks have color, but when she opens her mouth, her bottom teeth are missing. You can see right here. In fact, over the 3 or 4 years I've been watching Shani, she loses all of her teeth due to the acidic stomach bile eroding the enamel. Shani doesn't hold back about this. She frequently takes out her dentures and her face misshapens like a dehydrated apple. I don't say that to be mean, but it's the whole point. She's too young to look like that. Her disease has also wrecked her digestive and autonomic nervous systems. Sometimes she's so lightheaded, she can't leave the house for days, ends up vlogging from her unmade bed, surrounded by the discount store seasonal decorations she puts up to make her mostly young audience feel welcome and at home. Her husband Danny is a prop designer and his salary provides for both of them because Shani can't work and she refuses to add AdSense commercials to her videos. I say this to affirm, Shani is the real deal. She's not in this to make money. She uses her platform only to educate. But to our litmus, do Shani's videos actually incite people to change? They do. One thing to note about the Day in the Life of a Bulimic video is how gritty it looks. Clearly, it's a well-planned video. The angles are deliberate, as are Shani's motions, like how she tentatively steps on the scale again and again, and the whole thing's well edited. But the lighting is unprofessional, and despite her affection for fuchsia, Shani's lips are bare. Imagine if Shani didn't make these choices. If the video was exactly the same, except she was well-dressed and things were lit properly, I think it might have failed. Suffered a similar fate to Coney 2012. People would have thought Shani's life was thinspo porn, something to aspire to instead of something to avoid. But let's switch gears for a second, because I know the last example was fairly heavy. Because if we're discussing varieties of YouTube videos, we'd be remiss to exclude comedy. According to Google Analytics, comedy videos are one of the top 4 most viewed uploads after all. Whether comedy routines can induce political conversion or real sociological change has actually been studied quite a bit, and so far it seems like it can. Here's a tangible example. In 1999, Serbia had been under the dictatorship of President Slobodan Milosevic for almost a decade. At his helm, they'd undergone 4 wars with the former Yugoslavia, which basically wrecked Serbia. Its people were impoverished and cities were basically destroyed. And it sort of seemed like no one was going to do anything about this. Again, it had been going on for a decade. This is until Otpar, a Serbian youth movement, started causing little comical hijinks around Serbia. They let turkeys dressed as Milosevic's wife loose in a popular shopping area, for example. And suddenly people, everyone, started protesting, causing Milosevic to resign. Sreta Popovic, a former Otpar leader, discusses this in the Slate essay, Daily Show Colbert Report, Can Political Comedy Affect Real Political Change?, where he claims his laughtivism, as he called it, worked for 3 reasons. 1, people were afraid, and humor was useful in breaking that fear. 2, protests were designed so that however Milosevic responded, he looked stupid. And 3, the young people in Otpar having fun in the streets made activism look fun and cool. I think this all makes sense, especially the first one, which I believe is most relevant to topics like transgender rights, which feel new to many Americans. People are afraid of change, and even something like the invention of new pronouns like they and they can make certain people feel uncomfortable. Humor diffuses this. It's a way to show that people are people, no matter how you identify, which makes comedians that upload on YouTube, like Rob and Tran, very important.
I was talking to one of my guy friends. I've known this guy since we were kids, and he goes, hey, Robin, hypothetically speaking, if I'm finding myself starting to get attracted to you, since you started transitioning, hypothetically speaking, does that make me gay? And I'm like, well, that's a weird hypothetical question to Facebook message me at 3 in the morning. You know, like, kind of, why did you just like one of my profile pictures from June? That was weird. Like, are you going through my, what are you doing? So I looked it up because I wasn't sure, you know, but so apparently most doctors would say that if you're a man and you're attracted to transgender women, that doesn't make you gay. But I think that we should take that a step further. I think that if you're a guy and you're attracted to transgender women, not only are you not gay, I think that means that you're super straight, okay? Because it's like, yo, Kevin, do you like transgender women? Kevin's like, what? Do I like transgender women? Dude, as long as it's a girl, I don't give a fuck what kind. I'll fuck any bitch, dude. Black, white, cock, pussy. I don't give a fuck, son. If she's a girl, I'm down there, dude. Like, literally down there. I'll eat a girl's pussy. I'll suck a girl's dick, dude. I don't give a fuck. She's a girl. Transgender women, dude, that's like eating a box of cereal and getting a prize that you didn't expect, all right? Yo, I'm just kidding. It's not like eating a box at all right? All right. Yo, Kevin, you like pussy? You goddamn right I like pussy. Well, there's a porn actor named Buck Angel. He's a transgender man, and he's got a pussy. Did you eat out Buck Angel? What? That's fucking gross, dude. I ain't fucking gay, all right? I ain't gonna eat that dude's pussy, because that shit's fucking gay. And I ain't gay, all right? Now, if you excuse me, I'm gonna be over here sucking Christina's dick, all right?
Okay. So in this upload, Tran talks about gender relations and what it, you know, essentially what categorizes a woman and a man fluidly in a way that's both edgy, funny, and also relatable. Would watching one stand-up clip like this change someone's behavior completely and instantaneously? Honestly, probably not. But I don't think it's an inappropriate hypothesis that someone might see this video and feel a little bit more comfortable with the evolving gender landscape. At the top of this, I posed the question whether the sort of activism found on YouTube could be as effective offline. I'd argue that almost all the videos we watch today would not be, save the comedy, and possibly Coney 2012, which may have fared better, were it treated like Leonardo DiCaprio's tepid 2007 environmental doc, The 11th Hour, which played only at select theaters back when sitting next to someone didn't come with the risk of developing organ failure. Because imagine staging the Ice Bucket Challenge as a community event like how schools do car washes to get their cheerleaders to nationals. People might not have come. It takes a lot of effort to mobilize people, especially for a cause that, again, most people didn't even know anything about. Both Friedman and Chani are public speakers, but public speaking necessitates community interest, and there are still parts of the country that either don't care or won't accept what they have to say. For example, in deeply religious communities. That point might sound crass or outdated, but an article published just last year by Dr. John Petit in the Psychiatric Services Journal states that religiously reinforced stigma towards mental illness is still an obstacle to receiving effective treatment. It would be easy to end this here, wipe our hands, and conclude that YouTube is one of the good guys, a beacon of light for modern social movements. But that would be ignoring the sociological cost of all this. For example, ISIS has used social media such as YouTube for recruitment purposes, though most of their videos are deactivated by YouTube fairly quickly. An investigation done by a counter-extremism group found that in a 3-month period in 2018, 1,348 ISIS videos were uploaded to YouTube and 24% of them remained live for over 2 hours. All were eventually removed. White nationalist groups have also used this space for what I assume they'd consider activism, though YouTube has a strict policy against their content. But I believe there's a more nebulous problem. Be warned though, it might sound like I'm delving into conspiracy theory here, though if you're hearing this, it's because when I read this to my father, he thought it made sense. But let's start here. This is an upload to YouTube, but it's not technically a YouTube video. It's a clip from an Africa TV live stream. Africa TV is one of South Korea's most popular streaming services. It's similar to YouTube Live in that the content is user generated and viewers can comment in real time. You can see the messages coming in on the side of the screen. And this sort of video is called a mukbang. It literally translates to eating show, which makes sense because the content is someone eating and everyone else watching or theoretically eating at their own house. This may sound like a weird fetish, but I promise it didn't start this way. In fact, I'd argue early mukbangs, the trend emerged in 2009, were creative examples of activism. Here is the problem. Dining alone is traditionally thought of as shameful in South Korean culture. South Korean journalist Chun Mae-chun summarizes this point well in a 2016 article called The Horror of Dining Alone in South Korea, where she says, in a country where people go to great lengths to keep up appearances and maintain an intricate web of relationships, dining alone is akin to social suicide. But especially as the South Korean economy modernizes, people increasingly find themselves in situations where they have to eat alone. They come home late from work or need to eat while they work to meet a deadline. But if you ate while watching a mukbang, it was like you were eating alone together. It normalized the experience of eating alone in a number of ways, including the fact that you could physically see the content creator eating by themselves in their kitchen. They were not the only ones. You were not the only one eating by yourself. They were doing it too. While it's difficult to quantify numerically how the popularity of mukbangs influenced South Korean dining culture, the amount of people dining solo has increased in South Korea over the last decade, though obviously this is due to a myriad of factors. But in 2017, a neologism surfaced, hanjuk. It's a term for people who willingly undertake activities alone because they enjoy it. A Korean demographic survey showed that the number of people willing to eat by themselves at a coffee shop increased from 14% in 2009 to 30% this year. And like our obsession with gummy bear hand jelly and glass skin, America has embraced the mukbang with the savage of a middle school TikToker at a BTS show. But here it's gained a new identity, this identity.
Hey guys, so welcome to another video. I figured let's eat together. So we have Lee's today. Okay, I was gonna make a joke about how we're eating air. It wouldn't have been funny. Not really. Okay, so got a bunch of wings because that is my favorite. I have never had wings from Lee's before, so I am a little nervous. I hope that I like them. So I originally wanted the roasted wings, but you guys, they didn't have them. I was gonna do a couple of these types, but mainly roasted. And unfortunately, oh wow, okay. That's a hill. All right. I do eat this part. A lot of people don't. We're just gonna. Okay, so I'm nervous. Well, I don't eat the whole thing. Okay. Came with a biscuit, but I'm good. So far, so good. Wings are so good.
Okay, so just to say, I didn't mean for this to be the video, the part of the screen that it stopped on. It's just the thumbnail, and when I stopped, however I tried, it would not do that. But Amberlynn Reed isn't the most popular mukbanger on YouTube, but in the 9 years she's uploaded content, mostly mukbangs, she's culled over 200,000 subscribers. When Amberlynn started as a creator, she weighed 290 pounds, but last year she reached 570, and she was diagnosed with uterine cancer. Obesity is one of the biggest risk factors. There's obviously more to gaining 300 pounds, than doing daily mukbangs. Amberlynn could be exercising for sure. But she's admitted dozens of times that she has a binge eating disorder and that doing mukbangs are a manifestation of this. So when we watch Amberlynn's videos, when we eat with her, we as a community are watching Amberlynn fucking kill herself. She has ads on her videos. YouTube is paying her to kill herself. The point I want to make, the conspiracy I was talking about, is that when something becomes a social media trend, even if it started positively, we can't control what directions people will take it. Just because a trend's well-intentioned doesn't mean everyone will utilize it the same way. If mukbangs never existed, would Amberlynn Reid be almost 600 pounds? Probably not. She used to work at an assisted living facility before she quit to just do YouTube. And when she was doing that, she was on her feet all day. And to be clear, Amberlynn isn't the only mukbanger who's taken this format and upended it. Content creators like Nikocado Avocado and Foodie Beauty have experienced similar negative effects from their mukbangs. Foodie Beauty was actually also diagnosed with cancer. And so to be clear, this isn't the only form of social media activism that's gone awry, especially on YouTube. The popularity of vloggers like chronic illness advocate Claire Wineland, who died of cystic fibrosis last year, I believe, has led to an increase of Munchausen's as people emulate being ill to attract the same sort of fame and attention and community membership she and other legitimate illness advocates have received. This has become so prevalent that the term Munchausen's by internet was officially coined to describe this phenomenon. There are obvious repercussions of this. People donate needlessly and medical attention is deferred from people who really need it, but also manipulating your body to convince doctors you're sick can also make you ill. Last year, vlogger Chronically Jackie died after what was widely speculated to be an unnecessary surgery due to her Munchausen syndrome, so there's that. Do I think the potential negative effects of social media videos, such as on YouTube, outweigh the benefits? Absolutely not. We just have to be conscious of them the same way we are for anything that we put online. Any questions?
Wow. Before we get to questions, I just want to thank you for all of that. It was so illuminating. Can you clarify, just because I'm kind of new to this, the mukbang? How do you spell that so I know what the word is?
It's M-U-C-K-B-O-N-G.
Mukbang. Okay, got it. Thank you. I want to open up to questions. There is one question in the chat, which I want to bring your attention to. Mario asked, he was talking earlier about what TikTok delivers, genuine, raw, unscripted content, and says it seems that this is part of the high value impact. What are your thoughts on YouTube versus TikTok? He also says, thanks for your presentation. It's great.
I love TikTok. I think that it can, has some similar implications to it. The videos tend to be a little shorter on TikTok. And so if you couldn't put a whole mukbang on TikTok, for example, which could go either direction. But I think documenting something on TikTok can be just as beneficial as documenting it on YouTube. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Other questions? And just speak up. You can just unmute yourself and speak up, or raise your hand, either one. I just can't see everybody at once. So.
Hi, Kate. That was a great presentation.
Thank you.
What do you think about, for me, YouTube isn't a place I visit, but I see things that are reposted on Instagram or Facebook. Can you say your thoughts about the sort of the limbs of that tree?
So, and just to say, if it looks like I'm looking in the corner, that's because that's where you guys are on my screen, is in the corner. So that's an interesting question, because YouTube does have its own community. There are people who just will go on and peruse YouTube videos just all day long, such as myself. And then there's people like you who have different viewing habits. So I think one of the benefits of the shareability of YouTube is that it captures both segments of society. People who might not see it will inevitably see it on a different medium, and people like me who will watch it directly will be able to watch it directly. So I think, they were smart by making their videos shareable. Something just, which to say is different than Vimeo, for example. Vimeo didn't have quite the community that YouTube had. So even though you could share a Vimeo video potentially on your Facebook page, it didn't necessarily have the ingrained community that a YouTube video does.
Thank you. Other questions? You can speak up or put them in the chat. I'm happy to read out loud from the chat as well.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so Kate mentioned earlier, you mentioned earlier that like what the videos of, you know, police brutality do and like their impact on, you know, I guess the people who see them.
Sure.
I have a question and like a statement. I feel like because we've seen so many of those police brutality videos, we've been kind of numb to it, especially Black people. And it's also very traumatizing to see, like, you know, Black people getting killed on YouTube and Instagram and stuff like that. So I don't really know if people post them on YouTube, but I don't think there are trigger warnings on them. And in addition to that, like, it could be a form of activism, but why would we need to see like a person getting brutally beaten up or killed, you know, to take action or to be, you know, I just feel like it's really like a lot for the Black community. Like, does it have to go to this length? Someone has to see the video for it to just, I don't know, blow up, and for people who aren't Black to take action?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very valid point. And I tried to speak to that a little bit earlier in saying that should it have to come to this point for people to take action? Like, absolutely not. It should be good enough to hear about an incident and for people to take action. But that just doesn't seem to be what's happened. And that doesn't mean it's right. It's very, very unfortunate. There's nothing okay about the fact that just hearing about an incident or reading an article about an incident, that should cause people to take action. For whatever reason, it hasn't. And so I think having these videos has really helped. Again, I don't think it's good. It just seems to be that it is. And I can't reinstate enough how valid your point is and how well taken it is. I think it's something that itself could actually have its own whole dialogue. And whether they deserve trigger warnings is also a valid and important question to have, and that which goes to the point of whether things should be, you know, Shani's video could have had a trigger warning, very, very, very different video, but in theory, her video could have had a trigger warning, and that, you know, itself is its own conversation.
Yeah, that's the difference I see between Instagram and YouTube. On Instagram, you'll usually see certain trigger warnings for content that's, you know, I guess, well, triggering, but on YouTube, I don't really see that. Not from my experience. There's tons of things on there that shouldn't really be on there that you can find searching up the right thing, and there are no like type of content blockers or like trigger warnings or anything of the sort.
Would you want there to be?
Honestly, yes. So I obviously, if you're looking for it, then you know what you're, you know, getting into. But at the same time, YouTube is really free to anyone. I know my brothers, my mom did not censor them, you know, watching YouTube. So there were a lot of things that they saw that they go on YouTube and see that I feel like maybe they shouldn't have, or they could do whatever. I don't know if they have, but it's just so much easier to just see things that you shouldn't really be seeing at certain ages or for certain mental states, I guess.
I have a question for you. If you're, so the nice thing that I like about YouTube, one of the things about it, is that unless you have videos on a playlist and it's just playing and playing and playing, you are picking the content that you see. It's not like a Instagram where you swipe and swipe and swipe and you just happen to see something. If there was a trigger warning on a video that one of your brothers accidentally saw, do you think that would stop them from watching it?
I'm not really sure. I'm not sure.
Because theoretically, you choose what YouTube videos to make. And I understand a kid, like if a kid is swiping around, you know, a kid could easily land on something, but I don't think a trigger warning would stop like a 5-year-old.
Yeah, that's true.
And it could be that there's certain instances on social media that require trigger warning, certain social media spaces that are more appropriate for trigger warnings than other social media spaces. I don't think that the answer is necessarily cut and dry that everything always should have a trigger warning. But again, that's I would be very happy to continue having this conversation with you if you want at a later time, because I do think it's fascinating and it should be talked about.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Hi. I just wanted to say I really enjoyed the presentation and the idea of this presentation. I really think that, you know, activism, especially on YouTube, is important. I just wanted to point out, or I just wanted to ask about something. I remember a huge, like, a big point at the beginning of the presentation was, you know, there's a lot of like these change.org petitions that keep going around, and I know that I've signed like plenty of them, you know, like especially in the past few months. But like you mentioned, I think it really, what does it inevitably do? What does it come up to? It's a good way to make people feel like they're helping, but at the same time, there's not really a way to like confirm whether this actually made a change or whether, you know, this actually did anything. I think the most direct form of action is donating to trustworthy organizations and actually going out there and protesting. But the thing is, you know, not a lot of people have the means to do that. So usually what I want to ask, there was this one thing for the Black Lives Matter protests where people who couldn't afford to donate themselves, there were playlists of videos that were sponsored, I think, directly, you know, for the purpose of, you know, helping provide to these organizations. So if you watched the ads on those videos, they were just made specifically for that. I guess but I think YouTube at some point either started taking them down or they were deleted. I'm not sure. So what I want to ask, it's kind of an unclear question, but do you think that compared to like the petitions and like not being able to donate, do you think that that's a like accurate and like valid response to something like that? And if YouTube is taking them down, like what does that mean for activism in the future and activism on YouTube in general, you know?
That's great. So I actually didn't know about the playlist that you're talking about, but I actually think that's a wonderful and awesome solution to this problem. Change.org petitions are bullshit. I'm just gonna go out and say it. They don't do anything. What you're talking about actually seems like a form of direct action for people who can't, who aren't in the position to do other forms of direct action, and that's great. YouTube taking those down sounds very problematic and is something I am interested in reading about. Not sure why they would do that, and because I know that from, you know, I've talked about the fact that they won't let ISIS post and they won't let white supremacists post, so it seems like they're on the right team. I'm not really sure why they would take down something like that. Do you have any more information about that?
Unfortunately, I don't. I kind of have my own ideas for like why, but that kind of gets into like conspiracy theory stuff.
Oh no, that's great. I love conspiracy. Yeah. I love that. Tell me, what are they?
I don't know. I think it's just kind of like for me, from what I've noticed in all my years of like basically growing up on the internet and YouTube has a very specific audience and a very specific, which kind of goes back into the last comment that I 100% agree with, is that YouTube doesn't really have trigger warnings because YouTube, a lot of its, you know, user base wants to see something shocking, wants to see something, you know, like something that really hits you hard. And that's very common on YouTube to see. And so that user base, I feel like, has become desensitized to all this horrible stuff. And so it's like, I'm making generalizations and I rather like try and be careful with my words, but in like the simplest terms, I feel like YouTube's user base is not, a large chunk of it, from what I've seen from plenty of comments, plenty of things, this doesn't seem to be in their best interest. And so YouTube as a platform wants to keep the majority of its audience, and, you know, stuff like this and stuff like the Black Lives Matter protest, people think it's bullshit, people think it's terrorism, people, you know, a lot, and that rhetoric seems to be spreading a lot on YouTube. And so YouTube, wanting to keep the majority of its user base, decides to, like, you know, push these kind of videos to the side, which I understand as a company standpoint, but on like a humanitarian standpoint, it's it's a problem that I usually see around. Not really sure. I do have to do more research on it, but I do think that it is a very important thing to address when using YouTube, you know, on activism. YouTube is great to spread awareness and is like a fantastic way, just as like this presentation mentioned, but like it can also come with a lot of risk.
I agree. Great. Karen, I think you're muted.
I am muted. Sorry. Thank you. I want to, first of all, thank everyone for being here and for participating. Thank you, Kate, for raising such fascinating questions and thoughts. I'm really appreciative of this. I'm appreciative of all the people who were you know, participating as well. If you want to continue the conversation, I know Kate is very willing to share more information with you, as I am. Feel free to reach out to us. You can always reach out to the undergraduate film program, and we will make sure Kate is aware of anything that's, you know, we'll send anything to her. Any final comments from anyone before we close? I'd love for anyone to unmute with me and give Kate a final round of applause. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you being here. Thank you. Have a great afternoon, everybody.